In the vast stage of the human psyche, every relationship is a mirror that reflects not only who we are, but also what we fear to see.
There are connections that transform us without explanation, encounters that touch us deeply and yet vanish into silence as if they had never happened.
You're left with questions floating in your mind. What happened?
Why does someone who once seemed so close now feel so distant? What invisible force operates in the soul
To make someone think of you, remember you, dream of you, yet not take a single step toward you? Carl Jung, with his lucid and courageous gaze into the depths of the mind, reminded us that human beings are not moved solely by logic or conscious desire. There are older, deeper impulses that guide us without our understanding why. When someone remembers you but doesn't reach out, when they dream of you but don't knock on your door, it's likely not indifference that holds them back, but an inner battle greater than you imagine. The unconscious doesn't just hold forgotten memories. It also stores unspoken fears, unhealed wounds, and emotions that never found a voice. And those emotions, though hidden, have the power to sabotage even the most sincere love. Before we continue with the video, I want you to take a second and write a single word in the comments. Rebirth. Do it as a symbolic act, as a way of telling your soul, I am ready to let go of what does not choose me. I am ready to return to myself. Because rebirth is not starting from zero. It's starting from your truth. It's seeing yourself with new eyes, with more love, with more compassion. So if something inside you feels it's time to let go, to heal, to rebuild, write rebirth, because when you write it, you declare it, and when you declare it, you begin to live it. Imagine for a moment that you are the echo of a love that touched nerves too tender. It's not about what you did or didn't do, it's about what you represented. Sometimes loving someone means facing parts of oneself that have been hidden for years. Perhaps by getting close to you, that person felt their masks begin to fall, their defenses weaken. And not everyone is ready to be emotionally naked, to face their own shadow. Jung defined the shadow as that repressed part of ourselves that, though denied, continues to influence our choices. Often the shadow works by projecting onto others what we refuse to see in ourselves. You may have witnessed that projection without realizing it. Perhaps you were the reflection of a tenderness they learned to reject, or the symbol of a vulnerability that their personal history turned into a threat. When someone grows up in environments where love hurts, closeness can feel dangerous. Not because of you, but because of what it triggers inside them. In those cases, distance isn't a lack of love. It's an attempt at emotional survival. The body pulls away, but the soul stays. The rational mind says, don't go. Even as the heart races every time it thinks of you, Jung invites us to understand that human actions are full of hidden meaning. It's no coincidence when someone leaves just as they begin to feel more deeply. That's when psychological complexes take control. Old traumas are activated. And people, without realizing it, act from an emotional memory they haven't processed, and they call it fear. But in reality, it's a mix of unexpressed pain, unacknowledged need, and a deep confusion between what they desire and what they believe they deserve. Because yes, it also happens that many don't feel worthy of the love they receive, and so they reject it just when they need it most. When you experience this kind of silence, this distance loaded with meaning, it's vital that you don't interpret it as a judgment of your worth. The fact that someone doesn't reach out to you doesn't invalidate the connection you shared, much less your capacity to love. Rather, it's a testament to the many layers that make up the human soul, layers that sometimes contradict, resist, and protect themselves. Your presence may have stirred deep waters, awakened sleeping memories, or lit up corners that the other person preferred to keep in the shadows. And not everyone is ready to illuminate their darkness. The most important thing is not to forget that even if the other is absent, you are still here, present within yourself, aware of your giving, respectful of your process. The true journey does not always consist in chasing the one who flees, but in understanding that every soul is fighting its own internal war. Perhaps the best thing you can do is to keep your light shining, not as a beacon for them to return, but as a symbol of your own awakening. Because ultimately, the deepest love is not the one that clings, but the one that understands, that honors the other's wounds without losing its own center. So when you feel that someone misses you but doesn't reach out, don't take it as an ending. See it as a mirror, inviting you to look beyond the surface to discover the invisible roots of human affection. Jung would say that right there in that place where the soul hesitates, where love meets fear, is where true inner work begins. And maybe if you have the courage to look inward instead of outward, you'll discover that the answer doesn't lie in the other person's action, but in your own ability to remain steady, even in the midst of silence. Jung invites us to look inward with courage, like one who dares to descend into the darkest caves of the soul to find their own light. It is not enough to ask why someone pulls away even though they miss us. The real question is, why do we long so much for their return? What emptiness do we expect them to fill? What part of us still believes that someone else's love defines our worth? In those questions begins the path of individuation, a deep journey, often lonely, toward the discovery of who we are beyond the mirror that others hold up to us. When someone misses you but doesn't reach out, it's easy to fall into the trap of interpreting their silence as a judgment, as a way of saying without words that we weren't enough. But that would be seeing life from the wound, not from awareness. Jung teaches that every human connection is also an opportunity for self-revelation. Authentic love doesn't arise from need or attachment. It comes from wholeness. It is not an act of lack, but a free choice. If someone decides not to come closer to you, even if they carry you in their heart, that decision is not a reflection of your worth, but of the internal moment they are going through. In that act of distance may lie fear, confusion, or an unconscious battle they have yet to face. And that's where you have a crucial choice. Do you cling to the absence, or do you become presence for yourself? Do you wear yourself out waiting for the other to awaken? Or do you awaken? Suffering arises when we confuse desire with need, when we hand over to someone else the responsibility to validate or complete us. But wholeness, that sense of being at home with yourself, is only reached when you choose to stop chasing what doesn't resonate with you, when you recognize that you don't need to be chosen by anyone to feel complete. That is the transformation. That is the breaking point between the old self hungry for approval and the new you capable of standing with dignity in your own truth. Accepting that the other is not ready to love you as you do is not resignation, it's freedom. Because in that acceptance, expectation dissolves and wisdom is born. The wisdom of knowing that each person has their own rhythm, that true love cannot be forced or extracted, but is born from the meeting of two awakened souls willing to walk together without dragging one another. Jung stated that true connection can only occur when two souls have already walked a part of their inner journey. If someone hasn't yet gone down to converse with their shadow, if they haven't faced their own fears, they won't be able to sustain a deep bond without projecting their unresolved conflicts onto you. And you've probably felt it. The sense of being a mirror for something the other person is not ready to see. Perhaps your presence awakens dormant memories, repressed emotions, or a vulnerability they prefer to avoid. Maybe when they see you, they perceive without fully understanding a part of themselves they've denied for years. And so, even though they miss you, fear keeps them from coming closer. The conflict isn't with you, it's with what you represent in their unconscious. Instead of seeking answers in their contradictory behavior, pause and listen to yourself. What part of you needs the other to change in order to feel safe? What childhood wound is triggered when someone leaves without explanation? The distance you feel, that space left by someone's absence, can be a powerful teacher. We don't always need more love from others. Sometimes what we truly need is the opportunity to love ourselves more deeply, and that is where silence becomes fertile, where absence turns into a lesson. Jung expressed it precisely. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious at darkness. Sometimes appears as abandonment, as indifference, as rupture. But if instead of resisting it, you observe it, will reveal what you've not yet wanted to see in yourself. Perhaps the pain you're feeling isn't really about the other person. Maybe it's the manifestation of an old need to be seen, to be validated, to be chosen. But now, you have a unique opportunity not to beg for love, but to integrate yourself. Not to convince someone to stay, but to convince yourself that you are enough, even if no one else says it. Because only when you fully choose yourself, when you embrace yourself, even in solitude, do you begin to attract relationships that reflect that wholeness, not that lack. The universe, Jung said, responds to authenticity. It doesn't always give you what you want, but it gives you what you need in order to grow. So, if someone misses you but doesn't reach out, don't see it as failure. Don't turn it into a cross you must bear. Take it for what it is, a sign that this person is in their own process, perhaps very different from yours. And you, in the meantime, have a choice that can change everything. Instead of waiting, evolve. Instead of pleading for love, find yourself. Because the moment you stop searching outside for what only you can give yourself, everything begins to align. The absence stops hurting so much and becomes space. A space that you fill with presence, with awareness, with truth. And it is there, in that internal place, where the true meeting happens. Not with the one who turned their back on you, but with the one who has always been by your side, you. In the deepest part of our psyche dwells scars that time alone does not heal. Unresolved emotional wounds like invisible roots shape our decisions, mold our relationships, and silently sabotage the very thing we long for the most. Genuine intimacy. All of us at some point have felt the urge to walk away from someone we love. Not because love didn't exist, but because to truly love, requires something we are not always ready to offer. The surrender of ego, the exposure of the soul, emotional nakedness, and the fear of rejection doesn't always show up as a clear voice. Sometimes it hides in cold attitudes, in long silences, in subtle excuses. Other times it disguises itself as independence, as a desire to preserve personal freedom, as if love were a cage. In truth, what we fear is not losing the other, but losing ourselves within the bond, as if to surrender meant giving up our identity. But this belief is an illusion forged in past experiences, often in childhood, where we learned through pain that to love could also mean to be hurt, abandoned, or ignored. When someone misses you but doesn't come closer, when they seem to feel but take no action, they may be facing an inner storm they aren't even fully aware of. That conflict says nothing about you or what you gave or your worth as a person. It speaks of their inner world, their unresolved battles, of the parts of themselves they have yet to integrate. Jung affirmed that love, more than an emotion, is a deep psychic process, a path to individuation, a unique opportunity to integrate what is fragmented, to reconcile with the parts of ourselves we've denied, and to emerge more whole. But this path is not easy. Love, when it is real, acts as a mirror. It reflects not only beauty, but also what is broken. It reveals our deficiencies, our masks, our contradictions. And not everyone is ready for that reflection. There are those who, upon seeing themselves in that mirror, step back, not because they don't feel, but because feeling overwhelms them. Because to recognize oneself in love means to confront everything that has remained hidden beneath layers of supposed safety. And so when the desire to protect oneself is stronger than the desire to connect, what emerges is not surrender, but escape. An escape disguised as rationality, emotional distance as I'm not ready. This is where an essential question arises. One that cannot be answered with logic, but only with awareness. Do we truly want to share our path with someone who is not yet willing to walk their own? Because if the other person hasn't begun the journey inward, if they haven't done the work of facing their shadow, that shadow will inevitably seep into the relationship. The result of that psychic neglect is a painful dance of projections where every word, every silence, every reaction is interpreted through the filter of old wounds. What began as a connection full of chemistry and understanding slowly turns into a minefield of fear. Fear of abandonment, of rejection, of not being enough. Fear that creates distance, blame, coldness. And so what once promised closeness ends up feeding disconnection to love through the Jungian lens is not to lose yourself in the other, but to find yourself through the other. It's an act of deep recognition. I see you and I see myself, but if the person before you has not yet learned to see themselves with honesty, they won't be able to see you clearly either. They will only project their doubts, insecurities, and guilt onto you, and you, if you're not careful, can end up trapped in a narrative that isn't yours, carrying emotions that don't belong to you. That's when mature love requires a rare kind of courage, the courage to let go, not with resentment, nor with disdain, but with compassion and firmness. Because you cannot heal someone who refuses to look at their wound, nor can you drag anyone to the threshold of awakening. Everyone has their own timing, their own rhythm, their own dark night of the soul. And if that person has not yet chosen to face it, the wisest and most loving thing you can do is to continue on your own path. And yes, it may hurt. Distance hurts, silence hurts, but it hurts even more to betray yourself by staying in a place where there is no movement anymore. It hurts more to try to sustain a relationship that fades in the other's evasion. Jung said the soul needs conflict to evolve. Sometimes that conflict is absence, the pain of not being sought by someone who still carries you within. But even that pain can become alchemical if you use it as fire to illuminate your own shadows and keep growing. So if you've ever felt the need to walk away from someone you loved, or if today you're the one left waiting for a return that never comes, don't blame yourself.
Don't seek answers where there is only confusion. Return to yourself.
Recognize yourself. Embrace yourself, because only those who have truly seen themselves can look at others without fear. Only those who have integrated themselves can love without conditions. And only those who have walked their own labyrinth can offer a relationship that is truly a home for the soul. When someone misses you but doesn't reach out, what's manifesting is not a lack of feeling, but an internal limitation that has not yet been recognized or overcome. It's not always that they don't want to be with you. It may be that they simply can't hold at this moment the kind of deep and conscious bond that you deserve. The contradiction between what they feel and what they do is not disinterest. It's inner conflict. And this is where many people become confused. They believe they must do more, give more, try harder, as if love could be earned through sacrifice. But love should not be a battle. And you are not here to fill the empty spaces that someone else hasn't yet learned to name. When we fall into the belief that we are responsible for awakening the other person's capacity to love, we begin walking through a minefield of expectations. We try to become emotional saviors, mirrors that reflect light where there is still shadow, and in that effort, we can lose ourselves. This is the point where projection becomes crucial. Jung taught that the human mind, in its desire to be whole, tends to project onto others what it has not yet integrated within itself. We project our deficiencies, our hopes, our wounds.
If we feel unworthy, we seek validation in the other. If we feel we are not enough, we look for someone to give us that worth.
But when that person pulls away or goes silent, what hurts
is not just their absence. What truly hurts
is the echo of an older wound, one that existed long before the relationship ever began. That is where the true awakening begins. In the moment you stop asking why the other person doesn't return and start asking why you need them to. What part of you is still waiting to be chosen in order to feel whole? What emptiness are you trying to fill through another person's attention, affection, or presence? It's within that introspection that the potential for transformation is born. Because when you understand that their absence is not a judgment against you, but a reflection of their own inner process, you stop seeing yourself as the victim of abandonment and begin to see yourself as the protagonist of your own path. Jung said that destiny is not some external force that strikes us without warning. It is the sum of our conscious and unconscious decisions. And if you find yourself repeatedly seeking love where you are not a priority, it's not coincidence.
It's a pattern, one that deserves to be seen with compassion.
But also with responsibility. Because as long as you keep trying to earn the love of someone who is not emotionally available, you're neglecting the most important relationship of all, the one you have with yourself. Accepting that someone misses you, but doesn't look for you, can be devastating if your self-worth is tied to the other person's response. We've been conditioned to believe that love is measured in actions, in messages, in visible gestures.
But sometimes the greatest act of love from the other is not
Being there, because their unconscious presence could hurt you more than their conscious absence. And so comes the moment to decide.
You can stay there waiting for signs,
Interpreting silences, begging for explanations. Or you can use that space to reconnect with yourself, to strengthen your emotional autonomy, to rediscover your power. True love is not built on need. It is born from freedom. It is not a chain that binds, but a mirror that reveals. And when that mirror shows you that there are still parts of you seeking external approval, it is an invitation to heal, not to insist. Because an authentic relationship should not feel like a constant emotional negotiation. You shouldn't have to convince anyone to stay, nor justify their absence with excuses disguised as understanding. When someone pulls away, the question should not be, what did I do wrong, but what is this situation teaching me about myself? Am I seeking love from lack or from abundance, from dependence or from conscious choice? In that answer lies your transformation, because true growth happens when you stop waiting and begin to move not toward the other, but toward yourself. The human mind is a labyrinth of emotions, often governed by deeply rooted fears. Not everything we feel can be understood right away, and not everything the other person feels can be translated into action. Jung understood that the psyche is vast and complex, and that many decisions, even the most painful ones, are made from places the person themselves may not fully understand. There are those who feel intensely, but flee even more strongly, not because they don't care, but because what they feel when they see you touches parts of them they cannot yet handle. Some people grew up in environments where love was scarce, unpredictable, or conditional. They learned that affection could be lost easily, or that being vulnerable was dangerous. And even though they now want to love differently, their internal system still responds with the same protection mechanisms. Silence, detachment, escape. In those cases, love triggers an alarm, not a promise, and you cannot turn off that alarm for them. Only they can. When they decide to look inward, to face their own shadows with honesty, and to take responsibility for what they feel. So, if someone misses you but doesn't reach out, don't take it as a condemnation. Take it as a mirror, showing you how far you've come and how much more you still have to integrate. You are not here to wait for anyone. You are here to evolve, to heal your wounds, to love yourself unconditionally. Because when you do, you begin to attract relationships where love is not a struggle, but a dance where both choose day by day to be present, not out of need, but from shared wholeness. They may carry you in their heart, think of you more often than they dare to admit, and something inside them may stir every time your name crosses their mind. But it's also possible that the same heart burdened with unresolved memories tells them to stay away, not out of a lack of love, but out of fear. Jung stated it clearly. Emotional wounds that are not brought into consciousness don't disappear. They simply hide in the shadow. And from there, from the unacknowledged, they shape our decisions, our relationships, our silences. Emotional avoidance is not indifference. It is a defense mechanism, a psychic strategy the mind activates to avoid feeling the same pain again. Many people learn to withdraw from what they most desire, not because they don't value it, but because they don't know how to hold it without hurting. Love for someone who hasn't healed becomes a threat disguised as tenderness. And so someone who misses you may also feel that getting close to you means exposing themselves to loss, to disappointment, to an inner collapse. And their instinct, not their reason, screams that keeping their distance is the safest option. Sometimes silence is not forgetfulness, it is fear, fear of repeating what has not yet been resolved. But when this happens, when someone doesn't take a step toward you despite their longing, the most transformative question is not what's wrong with them, but rather, what part of me still needs the other person to come to me in order to feel worthy? What part of me has confused love with being chosen, validated, or needed? Because if their absence deeply destabilizes you, if that distance creates cracks that make you doubt yourself, then what is coming to light is not only their fear but also your own. The fear of not being enough, the fear of not being loved unless it's through someone else. And right there, exactly there, your awakening begins. Jung taught that the process of individuation, this journey toward becoming whole, is about integrating all of our parts, even the most fragile ones, even the ones that seek love from lack. Authentic love does not arrive to save you or to give you what you haven't learned to give yourself. True love finds you when you've already learned how to stand on your own without begging for affection. So if someone misses you but doesn't reach out, it is not an invitation to insist or to try to understand everything. It is an opportunity to return to yourself, to ask yourself from where you are loving, from freedom or from emptiness. When you stop needing the other to confirm what you should already be certain of, your energy shifts. Something within you aligns. You no longer wait anxiously for a message that never comes. You no longer interpret their silence as a verdict on your worth, because you understand their process is not your responsibility. It is not your mission to push someone into growth or convince them to stay. Your only task is to choose yourself with firmness, with respect, with love, because real love does not create doubt, anxiety, or strategies to avoid pain. Real love is presence, clarity, a yes, without conditions or excuses. And the first yes that matters is the one you give yourself. There comes a moment on the soul's path when letting go becomes an act of wisdom, not because it doesn't hurt, but because you understand that insisting on what doesn't flow is just another form of self-abandonment. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting or rejecting the experience. It means understanding that not everything you feel is meant to stay. It means trusting that what is meant for you will come without being forced. And if someone cannot walk beside you, it's not because you are not enough, but because they haven't yet learned how to walk with themselves. Jung affirmed that when we heal our own wounds, we stop attracting people who reflect them, because the external world is to a great extent an echo of our internal reality. If you find yourself repeating relationships defined by waiting, ambiguity, or the other person's fear of commitment, it is likely that a part of you still seeks to prove your worth through someone else's love. Until that wound becomes conscious, the pattern will repeat. Different faces, same lesson. But when you bring that wound into the light, when you look at it directly and choose to love yourself rather than chase someone who isn't ready, the cycle breaks, and without even looking for it, you begin to vibrate on a new frequency. You attract relationships not based on fear or need, but on truth and reciprocity. Relationships where you don't have to ask to be seen because you are naturally recognized. Where you don't have to wait to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. So, if today you're facing the absence of someone who thinks of you but doesn't seek you out, don't take it as a loss. Take it as a sacred opportunity for growth. Perhaps that absence didn't come to hurt you, but to show you how far you've come, how much you can support yourself without giving up your power, and how much more you deserve when you choose to live your truth. Because love is not begging. Love is being so full of yourself that everything that arrives is simply a reflection of what you've already found within. And here's the good news, the one that can mark a before and after in your emotional life. You have the power to transform this dynamic the moment you choose to stop waiting. Not out of resignation, but with awareness. Not like someone who gives up, but like someone who wakes up. Because true transformation begins when you stop asking why the other person doesn't come to you, and instead turn your gaze inward toward the question that changes everything. What do I truly need to feel whole? And then you discover something powerful. The deepest, most stable, most liberating love does not come from someone else. It comes from you, from your ability to be with yourself, from your decision to recognize your worth without needing anyone to confirm it, from your commitment to your own process of healing, of acceptance, of growth. And so when you finally stop seeking validation of your worth outside of yourself, in the words of others, in their presence or absence, you discover the most important truth, that you are already enough. Not because someone needs you, but because you are present for yourself. In that silence which once hurt, you now find space. Space for clarity, for peace, for the freedom to love from abundance, not from emptiness. In doing so, you don't just end a chapter, you end a pattern. You no longer wait to be seen because you see yourself. You no longer seek to be chosen because you have already chosen your own path. And only then, when your world no longer depends on someone else's steps, can you experience a love that is neither escape nor dependence, but a meeting of two beings who know who they are and who choose to grow together without fear, without conditions, and without losing themselves.